coding. And the shortest statement is curing disease with a word. And there's actually a whole psycho-emotional landscape laid out of the unresolved emotional conflicts that create physical issues in the body. Resolve the conflict, resolve the bodily problem too. I do some work in agriculture, growing highly nutrient-dense, high vibrational consciousness-enhancing food. And then there's playing of tones, which is a way to greatly expand your conscious awareness for rejuvenating the body. So that's the basics.
This journey back, turn of the century, I guess, close to it. As a registered nurse, playing my heart for my hemodialysis patients and seeing some incredible physiological effects, which started me to study like what exactly is going on, because there's not anything that I've ever been taught that can answer these questions. And so that has got me on a journey that I'm still on. I just finished another course online just last week on sound healing with John Stewart Reed out of London, and he's got some incredible stuff that's coming on the scene, and it just keeps on going. It just gets deeper and deeper. And so I'll be sharing some of that with you tonight. I'll show you how also that I have been able to, with the help of several other people, and I'll give some references that along the way, to actually go into the Hebrew language of the Psalms of David and make musical compositions that are in the frequencies that are actually found in the ancient scriptures as well. And all of that to say that it's time for us to get tuned up, because once we're tuned, then we can get help from him to not age. Okay. So anyway, this is a team effort here going on.
Hello everyone, I'm Dr. TheresaBullard. Let's see, so my background started out as a PhD in physics, and then ultimately found my way into metaphysics and consciousness and spirituality because I realized that it was such an important key to maintaining a sense of balance as a scientist, and also a sense of purpose and meaning into why are we trying to understand the universe and ourselves and how all of this works. So my passion became about bridging science and spirituality, science and metaphysics. I dove really deep into the ancient Western mystery school tradition, spiritual alchemy, hermetics, Kabbalistic teachings, and this path of initiation with what's called the modern mystery school. And so I weave back and forth between modern science and quantum physics with the mystical and the metaphysical. And in my talk tomorrow night, I will be presenting on how we can really tap into a state of quantum coherence, what it really means when we talk about quantum. What does that really mean? Like, what's at the core essence of that? And some of the keys to really being able to access that state. And then also, how does that connect in with our DNA blueprints and the potential stored within us as humans, and how we can awaken more of that potential from the very foundation of our being and flow that into our life in a very practical way. So I'm very much looking forward to being here all weekend and sharing in this experience with all of the speakers as well as all of you. So thank you.
Good evening, my name is Billy Carson. I'm the founder of Forbidden Knowledge, and you might have seen me in a few places, like pretty much everywhere. It's an honor to be here, it really is an honor to be here, and I want to thank Richard for giving me this opportunity, because I wasn't originally here, and I contacted him. He was very open to listening to me and looking into my work, and made a decision that, hey, we'd love to have you involved in this conference. So give Richard a round of applause. Some of you know, I started this journey with consciousness a very long time ago. You'll probably hear my story when I talk on Sunday morning. But this started for me back in 1977 when I was 7 years old. And it's been a long journey for me. having that one experience, which I'll go into on Sunday, but it took me on the path of discovery, researching aerospace, getting into sciences, eventually, having a passion for neuroscience, going to MIT, getting a certificate in applied neuroscience, and a certificate from Harvard in ancient civilizations, just to make sure I was on top of, the topics that I'm passionate about. And eventually, as you know, launching Forbidden Knowledge TV, which has become a phenomenal resource for a lot of people. I found that my passion was to be able to take the knowledge and wisdom and information that I've gained over the years from a lot of the other great speakers that I've had the privilege of encountering and learning from, as well as what I've been able to learn from traveling the world 3 times over, and put it into a format that people can digest and discern and learn from. And so far it's been very successful. And so I'm very pleased to be able to follow my passion and be able to deliver that passion to the people of the world. I want to thank all of you for allowing me to come here this weekend to speak, and I'm looking forward to talking about the power of sentient light on Sunday morning.
Yay.
So now I'm going to take over. No, actually I'm supposed to. But we're going to take some questions from everyone, for a little while. We'll talk a little bit. We have some great speakers here tonight. These are highly intelligent people. They've dedicated their life to the research in their fields. And it's really important to understand, from my own perspective, I understand how hard it is and how much work, they're going against the grain all the time, because obviously, if this was just the basic run-of-the-mill science, they probably wouldn't be sitting up here right now. This is revolutionary, incredible, earth-shattering, consciousness-inspiring content and information. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take and field a few questions from you tonight during this opening ceremony here. So if you would, there are microphones in the center of the aisles. You can walk to a microphone and you can ask a question to any one of us, and we will field that answer for you, and we'll have a little bit of fun with it tonight, all right? All right.
Thank you.
Does anybody have enough courage to come up and ask the first question?
Is there an Indian here?
You're here already. Okay, there you go. All right, shoot. No, let me rephrase that.
Do not use that word. Do not.
Go ahead.
I like where you're going with that, though. That's awesome. So if there was only one thing that you would all want us to leave with, it would be that one thing that would change everything in the human evolution, what would that be that you'd want us to know?
That's a lot.
You wanna start off?
That's a mouthful. That's a mouthful. Come on. You gotta be realistic. So much.
Very good. That reminds me of one of my favorite Valentine's Day cards, which on the outside said, "Let us live, let us learn, let us share the deepest secrets of our souls." And inside it said, "You go first."
That's a good one.
So, the heart of my presentation really is about the human potential. And while our work has to do with rejuvenation, and we believe we can minimally double the human lifespan even now, and that changes many things, as you all realize. Like, instead of being married to that person for 50 years, well, now it's 130. Better choose wisely. That having more time, particularly in a young body, gives more time for personal growth, exploration, creation. So part of it is our ability now, with existing technology, to transcend the limits of aging, which gives us more time. Oh, inside the white line. Oh, come on.
You've been recording.
I need constant coaching. The other, and many other speakers will give you methodologies for this, is that there's a whole range of techniques for overcoming the limits of our ancestry and our programming. And I believe we all have unlimited potential. And if you have all the time in the world, literally, you can become anything in the world you've ever dreamed of being. And I'll share some methods as well that are about A, being a superhuman, and then B, being super conscious. So the core message is to take all the stops off of the human potential and become even more than you could have ever thought possible.
What I would hope you would take is that none of you are here by accident. That you each are formed for a purpose. And that the world would be sufficiently at loss if you did not step into your purpose. Because there's no accidents. And I come from and I'll explain in my presentation, I think that because I work a lot with the scriptures and bringing the music out of the Psalms of David, I have a paradigm that I have a creator, and as I look upon creation, including all of us, there's incredible design, and there's incredible purpose, and there's incredible aspects of everything that we bring to the table. And I just think of this thing of, in the book of Esther, it says, who knows whether you're come to the kingdom for such a time as this? And I would just challenge each one of you with that same thought. You are each brought to this kingdom for such a time as this. And I would just encourage each one of us, myself included, to look for our purpose, to look for our reason, to look for how we can change things for where they need to be, because if we don't step up, who is? If we don't be who we are supposed to be, nobody else is going to step in there. There's an old preacher that used to say, if you ain't who you is, or if you is who you ain't, then you ain't who you is. And you is who you is. And each one of us has that built into us. And I would just challenge each one of us to look for that who he is and bring that to the table to share with each one of us around here in a very positive, loving, encouraging way that we can be for each other. And let's not be sucking this bait that's being tossed out to try to divide, but let's find our ways. I'm so encouraged to be in a group like this because I see that you all have this intention of being purposeful towards unity and uniting and coming together with a very common, good way of seeing the world. And that's what I want to see. That's what I want to share. And that's what I hope I can bring to the table today.
Well, I love that we started with a big question like that. It really says that you aren't messing around, that you're really ready to dive in. So what is that one thing that I would want to share with you about how we can make that big shift in consciousness, how you can be a part of it? I love what has been said by Dr. Todd and Steve here. I would add to that if we can come to know ourselves for who we truly are, not as these bodies, not as these personalities, but as that divinity that is within us, as that eternal essence that is within us. If we can come to know ourselves as that, everything else opens up. All of our potentiality that doesn't need to come from the outside to wake us up. It's from the inside that wakes us up. And there are many different methods and tools and techniques and ways in which we can tap into that. But ultimately, when we know that the power is within, that is the most important knowledge that we can gain, is the knowledge of the self. And so that spark of divinity is within you, the God spark. It's within your DNA, it's within every atom of your being, it's within body, soul, spirit, all levels. And we've just forgotten. So we often teach in the mysteries that all the knowledge and all the power that you need is within. We've just forgotten how to tap into it. And all we need to do is remember. So our journey is a journey of remembering. And the more that we can own and remind ourselves that the power is within, it's not in that thing out there, it's not in that person out there, it's in here, it's in me. That then puts the power back in our hands to do something about our personal situation, about our world situation, right? The power is within. And if we as humans can wake up to that, and it starts with people like you who are here, attending events like this, who really want to push the edge, who want to wake up and tap into your potential, but we need to hit that 3% within the collective. So as we wake up to that knowledge within, and we help remind others of that power that is within, and people, one by one, group by group, we start waking up to that inner power, then it spreads, hopefully, moving from this slow growth curve to this exponential growth curve. When we hit that inflection point, or that critical mass point, where people are waking up to the power within. And then we won't give our power away to the governments or to the people with the money, the power, whatever it may be. We'll all know that the power is within us. And that if we want to change the world, the responsibility is also within us, and the ability. If we have the responsibility, then we also have the ability to respond. And so that is really the biggest key that we can all take away from this, is that the power is within. Thank you.
We want to echo what our last speaker said. The divine spark is something we all strive for. Many of you may be aware that Desiree and I were involved with some SRI research studies years ago. This was going back already to the 1970s and 80s, that showed human potential was something that was really going to be the ways and the means of the 21st century. In fact, our work with Dr. Elizabeth Rauscher echoed the fact that the divine force is already here within us. We just have to assemble it and through the levels of experience, see the holistic vision. So it's not simply the divine spark, but it's collecting the sparks of divinity throughout the world cultures and presenting this in a way that can echo forth a global ethic, a whole new charter of humanity, should we say, emerging as a unified humanity in the context of cosmic intelligence.
Right, so Theresa also said that we are having that ability within us. And I think what everyone's here for, and what we also love to share, is the fact of how to develop that within us. How to be in touch with what we call our higher self. How do we tap into that understanding of, we'll say, the consciousness field that Lynn McTaggart talks about? How do we also filter the energies that are in that consciousness field to ones that are of more of a positive, loving, higher overview nature? And I love this because astronaut Edgar Mitchell, when he went out into space, and of course he founded the Institute for Noetic Sciences, said the greatest thing was that overview effect. Now most of us don't have that, but we can get it from our higher nature, who knows more, who has that greater connection. And when we start understanding the consciousness field that we're living in and how we're evolving to be part of that, I think that's a real transformation. We are in the process of human evolution. Some of the negativity that we've been seeing around the globe is because those who resist that higher nature. It's going to be hard to bring everyone along into that greater understanding of how, as Edgar Mitchell said, we are all one humanity. But that humanity is far greater than our three-dimensional, limited perspective of life.
Right, Professor Max Tegmark from MIT said everything is mathematics. Desiree and I disagreed. It's mathematics plus consciousness. consciousness is the hidden variable for quantum transitions. It's the hidden variable that we're just beginning to understand. It can mobilize a world humanity that is taking this great leap of faith and great leap of new science into the future. And so we must fasten our seatbelts and realize this is the most dynamic moment in history to be alive. The great breakthroughs that are taking place far outweigh the situations that we find in the media that is preoccupied only with negativity and a culture of death. We're interested in a culture of life, a culture of peace, a culture of the divine human partnership. This is the reality that we feel is emerging, the scientific, the spiritual, and a whole new psychology that will bring us into the most wonderful experiences yet to be found in the 21st century.
It's good to have you here. And so I'll take a crack at this question as well, and then we'll ask another person to come up and speak. We'll go to you next, sir. But just great answers, phenomenal answers, and they're all right. What I realized growing up, coming out of extreme poverty, literally coming from underneath the ghetto. I remember having to put cardboard in my shoes to keep my feet from touching the street because I had holes and only had 2 pairs of pants, and the crotches were ripped because I just kept growing like weeds. And I used to bleach my pants and then dye them with Ritz dye so I could change the color so I wouldn't get picked on in school. And so, but through that process and growing up in that environment, and then later on being able to move and grow and fortunately for me prosper into another environment, and then being able to see both perspectives and understanding context, understanding where I came from, and understanding the mindsets of the people in that area, understanding the mindsets of the people of the new area, but even though they were still all mixed races of people. But what I started to begin to learn was I saw this process that was changing, this process that was developing in time. And this process was consciousness. Even though the process seems to be slow, I have seen growth in the last 30, 40 years. Steady, consistent growth on a chart. When you're going to invest in stocks, you always look for a stock. You research it for about 20, 30 years to see what it looks like on a scale. It's going to have its ups and downs, but if it's on that upward trajectory, it might be a good long-term investment. And humanity is a great long-term investment. I've seen the process from both sides. Every group has its own process, its own scale of growth, but it's always in an upward direction, whether you believe it or not. There is a lot of stuff on the news happening. There's a lot of negativity in the world, but it's not that this stuff wasn't happening, to be honest with you. It's just because of technology, it's becoming more obvious. Technology speeds up, we get information instantaneously. This is not the worst time to be alive. I'm telling you right now, if you're a student of history as I am, there were far more greater worse periods on this planet that we're living in right now. This is not the end times. Not even close. Not even close. We have divine plague.
That's why we have so much
positions. We've had countless wars that ravaged the planet. We've had empires trying to take over the entire planet to force their ideologies, killing and murdering and raping people. We don't have that right now. No. Yes, there is war going on. Yes, there's things going on in countries. There's still abject slavery. There's still abject poverty. There's still shootings and all these kinds of things. But right now, I'm just telling you, if you let what's going on make you think that this is the end and we're falling apart, you're wrong. You're giving in to the dark side. What's really happening is, if you look at a baby starts to learn how to first sit up, hold his neck up, and then it wants to start crawling. We've done this. We put our neck up and we sat up already as a species on this planet. Now what we're trying to do, we're crawling. But what happens when a baby takes its first few steps of crawling, its first few, knee over hand? It falls flat on the stomach. Now to humanity, that may look like we're crawling, but then we fall on our stomach. Oh, we fell. This is a nightmare. We're going down the tubes again. No, it's a process. Eventually the baby gets to the side of a couch or a little table and it gets itself propped up and it stands up. Everything looks phenomenal now, right? Oh man, the baby's standing up. And then what happens? The baby falls right back down without taking one step. And humanity's going, oh my God, we were there, but we're not gonna make it. Right? Then the baby gets up again, climbs onto the edge of that chair or that couch, takes about 2 steps. The parents are all excited and screaming, and then the baby plops right down. So we're in this stage of Standing up, taking a few steps and falling. Standing up, taking a few steps and falling. That's the process of growth of consciousness. That is the actual process. What is walking? Walking is a set of controlled falls. That's what walking is. That's the scientific definition of walking. It's a set of controlled falls. Every time I can take a step, I'm controlling my fall. That's all I'm doing. Until humanity begins to get a consistent walking gait, then you'll be able to say, wow, we're really entering into that golden age. But we will have a time where we take 30, 40, 50 steps, and things are looking phenomenal. All doctors, amazing advancements in science are giving people longevity of life. His healing frequencies are taking people to a whole other level spiritually. You know, Dr. Theresa, she's using all this alchemy, and people are alchemically converting darkness into light. And then you have the Hurtaks, they're spreading wisdom and knowledge, ancient wisdom that's enlightening people and bringing it to the next level. And then all of a sudden, plop. Here we go again. School shooting, people being sold as slaves in Libya, whatever you want to pull out. But what we have to do when we see these things, yes, we're going to get frustrated. Yes, we're going to get angry. That's a natural, emotional human experience. We have to feel that, but don't stay there. Realize it's part of the process, and then say to yourself, what can I do to be a part of the solution? Become a solutions provider. One thing I learned early on in my life was, if I take the victim mentality, I'm still going to be here. If I take that mentality, I'm not going anywhere. When I went to Dr. Daniel Amen, who's one of the top psychologists in the world, he gave me a brain scan, a SPECT scan, and he read my brain like a book. He told me everything about me. Okay, the show is called Scan My Brain. Look it up on YouTube. Found out that I had a trauma pattern in my brain. From all the trauma that I had growing up with, watching people get murdered in front of me, and blood in the street coming home from school, and decapitated people, and people getting burnt, and my father was a drug addict, all this crazy stuff. But what he noticed was something incredible about my lobe. I didn't take the PTSD lane. I went this way. I developed something called PTG, post-traumatic growth. That's where you take all those traumas and you convert them into solutions. So if we take that mentality, like, wow, what can we glean from this? What can we learn from this? Okay, I'm not happy with these situations that are going on. What can I do to be a part of the solution, or what can I do to help create a solution? What is my passion? I'm passionate about these things. Write down on a piece of paper. Figure out how your passion can help some of the solutions for the problems that are happening in the world. And that would be my answer to the question. Yes, sir.
Greetings.
Greetings.
So I'm approaching this from a few angles. One, I'm a physician. Two, I just had one of Dr. Todd's laser treatments this afternoon. So I'm feeling, But the main thing is that I've explored this through the lens of someone that's really embraced other cultural technologies, and largely African. I trained as a traditional African priest. I understand about trance work and ways to actually shift and transform consciousness. And I'm particularly interested in looking at this from the standpoint that every culture around the world has something to offer to this conversation. And I'm very interested because, you have East-West in terms of that dynamic, but for me there's a North-South. So the whole shamanic piece around consciousness, and how do we use this technology to actually augment that, to turn on to those frequencies so that in my traditions, we're talking to ancestors, we're talking to spirit guides, right? But how do we hone this technology to make it more of a vehicle that's actually inclusive that way? Because I guarantee you, there's so many ancient technologies, because people are already having these kind of conversations, not from even a left brain standpoint, but actually embracing and being that energy. And I'm so happy just to see the conversation. And I always talk about this culture and this cultural technologies. And I'm really curious, relative to the exploration in those other cultural traditions where this has been their focus, right? This is where they started, and they're still at.
Okay. We'll talk about your technology.
So we are both social scientists, but we've also worked in Africa with the indigenous cultures. We worked 25 years with Mutwa, the great Zulu shaman. We studied with him. He had both the Catholic background, but also the nativistic background. So he combined in his methodology a greater holistic vision of balance and harmony. And you can see this in our film of his life, The Voice of Africa, which can answer many of your questions of how to deal with a pluralistic vision in the 21st century. Because under each of us, we have all of the colors of the covenant that was personified in Joseph's coat of many colors. So we have already the energies of Africa, we have the energies of Asia, we have the energies of the Americas that are beginning to blossom again into this greater sign of covenant, of healing, of visualization, of potential that can take us far beyond the restrictions of individual traditions.
Right, and so exactly, we have worked with the shamanistic cultures, both in South Africa and different parts of Africa, as well as in North America. We just flew in really from Sedona, Arizona, which is really the Hopi land. And we've also connected with people in Asia. And it's interesting, we had a very good friend that got out of Vietnam. Everyone kind of probably remembers some of that. And she was sensitive, and she guided a large part of her family tribe through mines, areas to protect them, to get out of where they were because they needed to get to another location. So the shamans have been working with this energy for a long, long time. But the more we talk even to the Hopi, we were just with a friend of ours called Ruben, who's well known, a lot has been lost. The energy, the knowledge of using consciousness is still there. How and where that came from, that is in many cases, unfortunately, what is lost. But with that said, they accept things on a much more easy level. I was talking, in fact, on our film with Credo Mutwa. He said when they saw unusual lights, we'll say, in the sky, he said all the native peoples, the people who really had their culture together in Africa, were not afraid. They had an explanation for it. They expected it. They knew it. He said all the people that had lost their culture were afraid of what they were seeing. So it's that has to now come back. And we believe what was there at the beginning of time, the ancient wisdom, the ancient knowledge, as Billy said about us, is now being understood at this time, and it's being gifted to everyone. That's the important thing. So what was part of tradition can now be actually used and experienced. And we also feel that there's the separation between us and what takes place in that consciousness field, which is much larger than our global planet, is also shifting, and we are being able to see more, know more, and be able to be empowered to use that energy that the ancient shamans, and that's why they're looking at us. They call us, like the Kogi call us the little brother, but they're still understanding that we are growing to be like them, to have that wisdom, knowledge of past, present, and future.
Hopi with all of their prophecies, the Zulu with their prophecies are telling us that this is the time that we must understand what it is to have this very harmonic body, mind, and spirit working together. That is the definition of what I believe King David wrote in Psalm 51. Give us a new spirit, a willing spirit, a Holy Spirit. It's the triple power that we find in all of the greater mystical traditions that has been hidden, repressed, and marginalized. This is now coming full circle. We're rediscovering the authentic, so we say, greater history that we have as a humanity. And this is preparing us for, I would simply overemphasize, is a pluralistic culture that will emerge in spite of the stress and strain. The holistic vision will surpass all of the limitations. We live in the most dynamic moment of seeing that we're at the next chapter of the book of life being written. We're very, very privileged to have this freedom to see all sides of the human equation that work in harmony.
It's a great question.